NASA astronauts have 2 years to learn everything: orbital mechanics, emergency medical procedures, Russian language, spacewalk repair protocols, robotic arm operation, a complete second career's worth of knowledge. In 24 months, the average college student has 4 years to learn one subject and still fails. Same planet, same brain, completely different results. Chris Hadfield became a guitar-playing, spacewalking, viral internet astronaut who commanded the International Space Station. He didn't start as a genius. He started as a farm kid from Ontario who wanted to be an astronaut before Canada even had a space program. He had no path, no guarantee, just a system. And that system turns average humans into the most competent people on Earth. I reverse engineered it, all of it. The training manuals, the cognitive protocols, the psychological frameworks. It comes down to 4 principles they use that you don't. By the end of this, you'll never approach a learning challenge the same way again. Chapter 1. Simulate the disaster first. Most people learn in safety. Comfortable desk, quiet room, no pressure. They read the chapter, highlight the important bits, close the book. They feel ready. They are not ready. Here's what actually happens when the real moment arrives. The presentation, the exam, the job interview, the emergency. Their brain freezes. The knowledge they thought they had evaporates. They blank. They choke. Why? Because they encoded the information in a zero-stress environment, and now they're trying to retrieve it in a high-stress one. Those are 2 completely different neurological states. What your brain stores during calm is not automatically accessible during chaos. This isn't a character flaw, it's biology, and NASA figured it out decades ago. Astronauts don't practice skills in calm rooms. They practice them in simulated catastrophe. Full pressure suits, underwater neutral buoyancy labs that simulate weightlessness, smoke filling the cabin, alarms screaming, teammates yelling conflicting information, heart rate at 160, hands shaking. Perform the task anyway. Psychologist Soyan Beilock at the University of Chicago spent years studying choking under pressure. Her conclusion? People choke because their working memory gets hijacked by stress. But here's the fix. You can inoculate yourself against that hijack. Practice the skill at the stress level you'll need to perform it. Your brain encodes the knowledge attached to that physiological state. When the real moment arrives, the stress becomes a retrieval cue instead of a blocker. Navy SEALs call it stress inoculation. Astronauts call it sim training. Psychologists call it context-dependent memory. You can call it whatever you want. The point is the same. Stop practicing your presentation in an empty room, present to an audience that can heckle you. Stop studying the exam questions in silence. Set a timer. Make it uncomfortable. Stop rehearsing your pitch to your bathroom mirror. Pitch to someone who will actually push back. Most people think this is about toughening up. It's not. It's about encoding. You are teaching your brain that this information is retrievable under exactly these conditions. The struggle during practice is not a sign you don't know it. It's the signal your brain needs to lock it in permanently. But encoding under stress is only half of it. Here's the problem, though. Even if you simulate the pressure, even if you practice under difficult conditions, your brain is still burning through material at the wrong speed. You're absorbing information, but in the wrong order. That's where almost everyone goes wrong. And Chapter 2 fixes it. Chapter 2. Backwards learning. Here's how normal people learn a new subject. Start at page 1. Read forward. Build from fundamentals. Hope it makes sense by the end. This is exactly backwards. This is why most people spend months on a subject and still feel lost. Astronauts don't have months, they have weeks. They can't afford to build from foundations up, so they flip the entire model. They start with the failure modes. Before Chris Hadfield learned how the Soyuz rocket worked in detail, he learned every way it could kill him. Before he learned the normal procedures, he memorized the emergency procedures. Before he understood the system, he understood what happens when the system breaks. Why? Because the brain is a pattern recognition machine built for survival. When you learn what the disaster looks like first, every detail you learn afterward gets automatically tagged. This is why that matters. This is what this prevents. This is how this fits the threat model. The information stops being abstract. It becomes load-bearing. Your brain refuses to let it go because it's connected to something that matters. Cognitive scientists call this top-down processing. You give the brain the headline before the article, the conclusion before the argument, the why before the what. Compare this to how school works. Here's the definition of a mitochondria. Here are the organelles of the cell. Here is how cellular respiration works. Weeks later, here's why any of this matters. Too late. Your brain already classified it as useless noise and started deleting it. Flip the order. Start with the crisis. Why does this knowledge matter? What breaks without it? What are you trying to prevent, solve, or build? Now go back and learn the fundamentals. They will stick instantly because they are no longer abstract. They are solutions to problems your brain already registered as real. Try this with anything. Learning Python? Don't start with variables and syntax. Start with what Python actually does. Real programs. What do they look like? What breaks? What are the common mistakes experienced developers warn about? Now go back and learn the syntax. Your brain will organize every rule around a real-world structure it already understands. Learning a language? Don't start with grammar tables. Start with a conversation you desperately need to have. Build everything else around that moment. Backwards learning cuts acquisition time in half. Not because you're skipping steps, because you're giving your brain a skeleton to hang information on before you hand it the information. 2 chapters in. Hit subscribe before you forget. We build cognitive systems here. But here's the thing. Backwards learning fills your brain with the right material. Stress inoculation locks it into the right neurological state. But there's still a massive leak in the system. Most people patch the wrong hole. Chapter 3 is where the real gap is. Chapter 3. The forgetting loop. Your brain deleted 70% of what you just read. It's deleting right now. Not because you're stupid, because deletion is the default setting. Your brain is not a library. It's an aggressive editor. Everything that doesn't get reinforced gets purged. This is called the forgetting curve, and Hermann Ebbinghaus mapped it in 1885. He discovered that within 24 hours, you lose more than half of what you learned. Within a week, 90% is gone. Most people respond to this by rereading. Wrong. Completely wrong. Rereading is the most popular study strategy in the world, and one of the least effective ever measured in research. Roediger and Karpik at Washington University proved this in 2006. Students who reread scored 50% lower on retention tests than students who tested themselves. Same material, same time investment, wildly different outcomes. Here's why. When you reread, your brain recognizes the words. Recognition feels like knowledge. It's not knowledge. It's familiarity wearing a mask. Psychologists call it the fluency illusion. The material feels familiar, so your brain signals. I know this, but familiarity and retrieval are different cognitive operations. One is passive, one is active. Astronauts don't reread their manuals. They close them and test themselves constantly. Daily. Multiple times a day. Not to check if they know something. To force the retrieval process. Because retrieval is not just a test of memory. Retrieval is the act that creates memory. Every time you successfully pull information out of your brain, you deepen the neural pathway. Every time you fail to retrieve it and then find the answer, you deepen it even more. The struggle to remember is not a sign of failure. It is literally the mechanism of learning. The moment you strain to recall something and finally get it, your brain stamps it. Important. Keep this. NASA astronauts use a specific retrieval protocol. They call it chair flying. Before a procedure, before a mission, before a spacewalk, they sit in a chair, eyes closed, and mentally walk through every step, every decision point, every contingency, in complete silence. No manual, no notes. Just memory under pressure. If they blank, they note the gap. Then they study only that gap. Then they chair fly again. This is not review. This is active interrogation of their own knowledge. Robert Bjork at UCLA has studied this for decades. He calls it desirable difficulty. The harder it is to retrieve, the stronger the memory becomes after retrieval. This means the most uncomfortable study session, the one where you can barely remember anything, is the most productive one. The session where everything comes back easily? You're wasting your time. You already know it. The practical version. Close the book right now. What were the last 3 concepts you read? Write them down without looking. What's missing? Study only that. Repeat in 2 days, then 5 days, then 12 days. This is spaced repetition. The algorithm your brain runs on whether you acknowledge it or not. Work with it or keep leaking. But here's the one thing almost nobody does. The thing that separates people who plateau from people who keep accelerating. It's in Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The incompetence window. There is a window of time, right after you learn something new, where you are maximally dangerous. Not maximally skilled, maximally overconfident. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger documented this in 1999. People with the least knowledge in a domain consistently overestimate their own competence. Meanwhile, the actual experts underestimate themselves. Your brain is not honest with you about what you know. It tells you you've got it when you don't. It tells you you're ready when you're not. And the higher your confidence, the less you push to improve. You stop drilling the weak spots. You stop seeking feedback. You think you're done. You're not done. You just entered the most dangerous phase of learning. Astronauts are trained explicitly to distrust their own assessment of their competence, not because NASA wants them to feel bad, because overconfidence in space is a death sentence. Chris Hadfield describes this as being scared of the wrong things. Most people are scared of failure. Astronauts are scared of unknown unknowns. The thing they don't know, so they have a system to find those blind spots on purpose. Red team drills. A separate team is assigned to find every gap in the astronaut's knowledge, to probe for weak points, to ask the questions they haven't been asked, to simulate the failure modes they haven't practiced, not to humiliate them, to vaccinate them against the illusion of competence before that illusion kills them. Your version of this doesn't require a NASA budget. It requires one rule. Never assess your own readiness. Have someone else probe it. Teaching is the most powerful form of this. The moment you try to explain something you think you understand, every gap appears immediately. You thought you knew it. You start explaining. You hit a word and realize you can't define it. You try to describe a mechanism and realize you're waving your hands. The confusion you feel in that moment is information. It is a map of exactly what you need to go back and learn. Richard Feynman built an entire learning technique around this. Want to know if you understand something? Explain it as if to a child. No jargon, no abstractions, simple language. If you can't do it, you don't understand it. You just memorize the vocabulary. There's a difference, and most people never discover that difference because they never test themselves this way. The incompetence window closes through deliberate exposure, not through time. Passage of time does nothing. Getting challenged, getting tested, getting it wrong, and correcting it. That closes the window. The average learner avoids this. The elite learner seeks it out aggressively. Erickson studied expert performance for decades. His conclusion challenged everything people believe about talent. The factor separating elite performers from average performers wasn't intelligence, wasn't natural ability. It was deliberate practice. Specifically, practicing at the edge of current ability. Not comfortable repetition of what you already know, targeted practice of what you cannot yet do. Your brain grows at the boundary of capability. Practicing inside your comfort zone is maintenance. Practicing outside it is growth. And you need to know exactly where that boundary is. That requires feedback. That requires being wrong. That requires the discomfort you've been avoiding. 4 chapters. 1 system. Here's what it looks like assembled. Step 1. Before you learn anything, learn how it fails. What's the disaster? What are the emergency procedures? What are the worst-case scenarios? Build your skeleton of consequences first. Step 2. Simulate the pressure you'll face when you need to perform. Study in conditions that match the performance environment. Encode the knowledge in the neurological state you'll retrieve it from. Step 3. Close the book. Test yourself constantly. Make retrieval the primary activity. Struggle to remember. Fail to remember. Find the gap. Study only the gap. Repeat at increasing intervals. Step 4. Never trust your own assessment. Teach it. Have someone probe it. Find the incompetence window before it finds you. This is how a farm kid from Ontario becomes commander of the International Space Station. Not because he was born extraordinary, because he used a system that other people have access to and never use. By the way, I built everything in this video into a one-page training protocol. The backwards learning template, the stress inoculation schedule, the retrieval testing tracker, the gap mapping exercise. Link in the description. It's free. Print it. Use it tonight. But here's the problem, though. You now have the system for encoding information faster, retrieving it permanently, and closing the overconfidence gap. But none of it works if your brain is physically not capable of consolidating what you're putting in. Most people are running this entire system on hardware that's been compromised, not by laziness, by one specific thing they do every night without realizing it. That's why I made this video breaking down the exact sleep protocol used by the world's highest performers to lock in learning while they're unconscious. It's almost unfair. Watch it next.